Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's India versus Donald Trump. After unleashing the tariff war, the US president is trying to police India's energy deals. He's targeting Russian oil. We'll tell you how New Delhi has responded. China too is defying US pressure, refusing to give in to Trump's demand on Russian and Iranian oil. But Washington's response is remarkably different. We will tell you how. Meanwhile, Trump is doing exactly what he would expect from a Nobel Peace Laureate. He is deploying nuclear submarines near Russia. At home, his team is sounding more like a cult. Social media is comparing it to North Korea. Also in focus, the Iran-Pakistan reset. President Pezeshkian is in Islamabad. We will bring you the highlights of this visit. Amid the Gaza starvation crisis, Israel triggers fresh outrage with the minister visiting the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The United Kingdom wants over 100 crore rupees from India in parking fines. We will explain. What's the $1.5 trillion plastics crisis that experts are warning about? And why are rhino horns being made radioactive, not by poachers, but by scientists? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is in India on a 5-day state visit. This is President Marcos' first visit to India since he assumed office in 2022. He will hold talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi tomorrow. The visit comes as the two countries launched their first joint patrol of the disputed South China Sea. Beijing claims nearly the entirety of the waterway. Cambodia and Thailand begin talks in Malaysia as a fragile ceasefire continues to hold a week after the two sides agreed on it. Defense officials from Cambodia and Thailand are holding these preliminary talks. A key ministerial-level meeting has been scheduled for Thursday. The ceasefire ended the worst fighting between the Southeast Asian neighbors in over a decade. A boat carrying mostly Ethiopian migrants sinks off Yemen, killing at least 76 people while dozens more are missing. More than 30 people have been rescued. The accident occurred in southern Yemen. It is a frequent destination for boats smuggling African migrants to the Gulf states. 17 heat records broken in Japan today after the country experienced its hottest ever June and July. The weather agency has warned of severe heat in the coming months as well. With poor rainfall and soaring heat, several dams are almost empty. This has led to fears of water shortage and a poor harvest. And India beat England by just 6 runs in a thrilling 5th test at the Oval. The win helped the Indian team square the test series. Fast bowler Mohammad Siraj was the star performer. This is India's narrowest winning margin in a test match.
Tariffs give our country protection against those that would do us economic harm. And
Donald Trump is learning a new harsh lesson, that the world is not his playground. Maybe he can bully his neighbors and allies, but he cannot bully major powers, and proving that is India. First, the US president imposed tariffs on Indian goods, 25% tariffs despite trade talks. Then he introduced a Russia angle. Trump has finally read a newspaper after 3 years. He has realized that India buys oil from Russia. And the revelation has shaken him. So his new obsession is this. Trump wants India to stop buying Russian oil. Just a short while back, he posted on social media. Listen to what he said. India is not only buying massive amounts of Russian oil, they are then, for much of the oil purchase, selling it in the open market for big profits. They don't care how many people in Ukraine are being killed by the Russian war machine. Because of this, I will be substantially raising the tariff paid by India to the USA. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This is Trump's new obsession. attacking India for Russia's war. Last week, his Secretary of State chimed in. He called the oil purchases a point of irritation. Yesterday, Trump's top advisor spoke out too. Listen to what he said.
So what he said very clearly is that it is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing the oil from Russia. People will be shocked to learn that India is basically tied with China in purchasing Russian oil. That's an astonishing fact. India portrays itself as being one of our closest friends in the world, but they don't accept our products.
For starters, it's not an astonishing fact. It's been all over the news since the war started. The Trump camp has just realized it. Secondly, it's not acceptable. Who asked for Trump's acceptance? The fact is, he is failing. He, Donald Trump, promised to strike a ceasefire on the first day as president. On his first day as president, today is day 196. President Putin has played him like a fiddle. Instead of admitting that, Trump is deflecting. He is asking India to stop buying Russian oil. If not, he is threatening 100% secondary tariffs. Just one problem, though. India is not playing Trump's game. Reports say there is no ban on Russian crude. This weekend, at least 3 vessels brought Russian crude to India, around 2.2 million barrels of it. So forget ban, forget scaling back, the Russian oil tap continues to be open. As for the ties with Moscow, New Delhi has made its stand clear. Our relationship is time-tested and steady.
Our ties with any country, or all the ties that we have with various countries, they stand on their own merit, and they should not be seen from the prism of a third country. As far as India-Russia relations are concerned, we have a steady and time-tested partnership.
Let's put this issue in context. Technically, there is no sanction on Russian oil. You're free to buy as much as you want. But the West has scaled back purchases, so naturally Moscow started selling it elsewhere. Enter India. We have scooped up Russian oil at discounts. Before the war in Ukraine, Moscow made up just 2.5% of India's oil imports. Today, it's almost 35%. In fact, Russia is the top crude supplier to India. So Trump is asking a lot from India. He wants us to abandon our top oil supplier. Also, this demand is not isolated. It is part of a series of attacks against India. First, Trump claimed credit for the Pakistan ceasefire. Then he slapped 25% tariffs on India, and now he is adding the Russian angle. Chances are the Indian leadership is losing patience. Prime Minister Modi struck a defiant tone over the weekend.
इसलिए भारत को भी अपने आर्थिक हितों को लेकर सजग रहना ही है। हमारे किसान, हमारे लघु उद्योग, हमारे नौजवानों के रोजगार, इनका हित हमारे लिए सर्वोपरि है। अब हम कुछ भी खरीदें तो एक ही तराजू होना चाहिए। हम उन चीजों को खरीदेंगे जिसे बनाने में किसी न किसी भारतीय का पसीना बहा है।
It's like Trump is on a war path, like he's spoiling for a confrontation with India. On this show, we've talked about his tariff concerns, so tonight let's address the Russian oil. For starters, India is not doing anything illegal. If Trump has a problem with Russian oil, get it sanctioned. Move a resolution in the United Nations Security Council, get it passed, and then shut the tap. But Trump is not doing that. He's trying to curb a perfectly legal commercial exchange. Why? Because it does not suit him. I'm afraid that's not how the world works. Trump also says India doesn't care about the people killed in Ukraine. Is that why Prime Minister Modi visited Kiev personally? Is that why he consoled President Zelensky? Is that why he told President Putin that this is not the era for war? And please spare us the lectures on humanity. Trump and his buddies insulted Zelensky in the Oval Office. You invited and ambushed him. And secondly, look at your own allies in Europe. The European Union is buying more and more Russian energy. Last year, they bought $25 billion of it. That's Russian oil plus gas, 25 billion. It's more than what Europe gave Ukraine in military aid. The aid to Ukraine was $21 billion. The energy payments to Russia were $25 billion. If you think that's absurd, listen to this. Until January this year, 2025, Russian gas was transiting through Ukraine. Massive pipelines run from Russia to Europe. Some of them cross over Ukraine. Until January this year, Kiev was getting paid for this. Almost $800 million annually. I'll repeat that for you. Ukraine was getting paid for allowing Russian gas to transit over its soil. Yet, who is the problem? India. New Delhi has faced similar criticism before too, but those were of a moral nature. Joe Biden's officials would often lecture us, they would appeal to our humanity. It was a problem, but not a deal breaker. You just had to suffer through the fake morality. With Trump, it's different. Despite being a so-called friend, he is drawing red lines for India. We say good luck. Trump's predecessor spent years trying to build goodwill in New Delhi. He's undoing all that hard work, one social media post at a time.
This is kind reciprocal.
So India won't give in to Trump's pressure. It is ready to face short-term pain to secure long-term national interest. And China is taking the same position, it seems. Beijing's trade talks with Washington have stalled. The deadlock is over energy. The US wants China to stop buying oil from Iran and Russia, but Beijing has refused to comply. Last week, both sides met in Stockholm, China and the US. The goal was clear: avoid tariffs, end the impasse, and find common ground. But there's still no deal. China has refused to accept Trump's latest demands. Here's what the Chinese side has said. Coercion and pressuring will not achieve anything. China will firmly defend its sovereignty, security, and development interests. China is among the biggest customers for Iran and Russia. It buys almost all of Iran's oil. We're talking about 80 to 90% of Iran's oil exports. They go to China. That's more than 1 million barrels every day. And this oil fuels China's economy. Remember what happened in June this year? The Americans carried out airstrikes in Iran. They attacked Iranian nuclear sites. In response, Tehran issued a threat. Its parliament said they will close the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Strait of Hormuz is a very important waterway. It is critical for global energy supplies. About 20% of the world's oil and gas flows through here. A large number of these consignments go to China, which is why China pushed back against Iran's threat. China told Iran to not block the Strait of Hormuz, and it worked. China also buys a lot of oil from Russia. It's the second biggest buyer after India. In April this year, China increased its Russian oil imports by 20%. It bought over 1 million barrels per day. Long story short, these are important relationships for China. Oil supplies from Iran and Russia power China's economy, and it is not going to abandon them because of Donald Trump. In other words, China's stand is similar to India. But Washington's response is remarkably different. For India, they have sharp public warnings. For China, they have carefully chosen words. Listen to this.
The Chinese are tough negotiators. We're tough too. It was led by the vice premier, my counterpart, Hu Feng, who I have great respect for. He is both a statesman, a tough negotiator, and very senior in the leadership. We pushed back on them quite a bit and made our positions known. I believe that we have the makings of a deal.
Trump officials say they are close to a deal, but Beijing has not confirmed that. The meeting in Stockholm was supposed to lead to a breakthrough. This was the third round of talks since April. A few months back, both sides had slapped tariffs on each other. Tariffs that exceeded 100%. Then in May, there was a breakthrough. American and Chinese officials met in Geneva. They agreed to a 90-day pause, and tariffs were lowered temporarily. The US dropped duties from 145% to 30%, and China cut levies from 125% to 10%. Now, this 90-day pause is set to expire. The deadline is 12th of August. What happens after that? The triple-digit tariffs return. And this is where Trump's lack of leverage shows. He is the one who started this. But when China hit back with tariffs and export curbs, Trump rolled back. He slashed the tariffs, he put export controls on hold, he even allowed critical technology to be shared. And last month, Trump gave a major concession. He allowed the sale of NVIDIA's advanced chips to China, the H20 chips. Despite their military potential, despite bipartisan criticism, Trump let China buy these chips. In fact, officials from his last administration have criticized the move. Two of them even wrote a letter. I have a copy with me. This is what it says. We believe this move represents a strategic misstep that endangers the United States' economic and military edge in artificial intelligence, an area increasingly seen as decisive in 21st century global leadership. The letter changed nothing, though. Trump still greenlit the sale of chips. He dialed down the rhetoric. He softened his stand on China, perhaps chasing a deal, perhaps chasing a photo op with Xi Jinping. Either way, it's hit a wall. Trump is staring at yet another deadlock, and China refuses to blink.
People being killed and everything goes forward.
It must be great to be Donald Trump. No sense of nuance, no idea about context, just a second-grade understanding of everything. Deficit, bad. Tariffs, good. Missiles, bad. Ceasefire, good. It's great if you're a 5-year-old, but if you're the US president, you expect more maturity and understanding. Look at what he did on Friday. Trump announced that he was moving 2 nuclear submarines. To where? So-called appropriate regions near Russia. And listen to why he did it.
Well, we had to do that. We just have to be careful. And a threat was made, and we didn't think it was appropriate, so I have to be very careful. So I do that on the basis of safety for our people. A threat was made by a former president of Russia, and we're going to protect our people.
It was such a random announcement. No details on which submarines, no hint on where they were deployed, just some casual nuclear rhetoric on social media, that too over comments on the internet. Trump claims he was triggered by Russia's former president. His name is Dmitry Medvedev. Last week, he had a message for Trump. The US president had asked Moscow to end the war by August 8th, but Medvedev hit back. He said ultimatums were a step towards war. Apparently, Trump did not like that. He felt the language was threatening. Therefore, he deployed nuclear submarines near Russia. Now, just to be clear, do not fall for this Truth Social post. Chances are the US always had nuclear submarines in appropriate regions. It's standard deterrence procedure. So the announcement was not a military one, it was a political one. Trump is trying to send a message to Moscow. He is trying to build pressure on Vladimir Putin. Like I said, he set a deadline. Trump wants a ceasefire deal by Friday, this Friday, August 8th. If not, he is threatening major sanctions and tariffs. Not just on Russia, but also on countries that trade with Russia. Although Trump himself is not confident it will work, he admitted that Russia is good at avoiding sanctions.
What happens on Friday if the deadline comes and Russia has not agreed to a ceasefire?
Well, there'll be sanctions, but they seem to be pretty good at avoiding sanctions. You know, they're wily characters, and they're pretty good at avoiding sanctions. So we'll see what happens.
So what's the plan then? Trump is sending his top negotiator to Moscow, his special envoy Steve Witkoff. Witkoff is expected to visit on Wednesday or Thursday. The Kremlin suggested that he will meet Putin. Expect him to bring a singular focus on these talks. Actually, scratch that. Witkoff is also talking to Hamas, Israel and Iran. It's surprising he can keep track of which war he's ending. As for Russia, they are not panicking. They cautioned against Trump's nuclear rhetoric, but they remain open for talks.
Naturally, we think that everyone should be very careful with a nuclear rhetoric. We do preserve our commitment to the idea that the preferable way to settle the Ukrainian problem should be reached by political and diplomatic means.
And what's happening on the battlefield? Ukraine launched a daring attack over the weekend. They fired dozens of drones into Russia. Some of them struck an oil depot in Sochi. The building erupted into a fireball. Take a look. This attack was a response to last week. On Thursday, Russia launched a wave of missiles at Ukraine. They mainly struck two cities, Kiev and Mykolaiv. At least 31 people were killed in Kiev. It was the deadliest Russian attack in 1 year. That's the aerial battle. On the ground, Russia continues to advance. They have captured a key city in the east, Chasiv Yar. Both sides fought 18 months to control this city, but last week Russia prevailed. In fact, they're making progress across the front line. It makes you wonder, where is this heading? Is Trump making it worse? He certainly underestimated the challenge. He plunged into this peace campaign with no plan. First, he organized talks with Russia. Then he cut off aid to Ukraine. Then he restarted aid to Ukraine. Then he gave Russia 50 days to end the war. Later, he cut that to 10 to 12 days. And finally, he set the Friday deadline. Like I said, Donald Trump appears to have no understanding of this conflict. Did he think asking nicely would help? Does he think 2 nuclear submarines will scare Putin? No, they won't. But such reckless moves do reveal a problem. The problem of having a maverick at the wheel. Just think about it. Has any European country deployed nuclear submarines against Russia? Have they threatened Moscow with nukes? No, they haven't. Because despite their support for Ukraine, they have some red lines. With Donald Trump, who knows? Maybe he'll get bored and abandon Ukraine. Maybe he'll get angry and bomb Russia. This ambiguity is a risk for the entire world. Donald Trump is not just surrounded by yes men and women, he's built an entire ecosystem of them. They cheer, they flatter, they validate. So when reality knocks, he simply doesn't answer. Case in point, the US jobs report for July. Only 73,000 jobs were added last month, in the month of July. 73,000 jobs, that's far below projections. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is a revision. The numbers for the months of May and June were quietly revised, 258,000 fewer jobs than initially claimed. A discrepancy of 258,000 jobs. This is not a blip, this is a reflection on the US economy. Now let's be clear, jobs data is often revised. It happens under every administration, but this time it hit a nerve. Because Trump's entire brand rests on this one claim: I built the greatest economy ever. So when you get a weak jobs report, it becomes more than a statistic. It's a personal insult. And if there's one thing Donald Trump does not take well, it is facts that do not flatter him. So of course he lashed out. In fact, let me read out from his post on Truth Social. This is what he said: I have directed my team to fire this Biden political appointee immediately. She will be replaced with someone much more competent and qualified. In my opinion, today's jobs numbers were rigged in order to make the Republicans and me look bad. So Trump has fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's the agency that releases the jobs report. And why was she fired? Because the US president says the data is fake. Of course, he's given no evidence for it, which is classic Donald Trump.
I've had issues with the numbers for a long time, but we're doing so well. I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election, and there were other times. So you know what I did? I fired her. And you know what? I did the right thing.
But the move has raised questions. For decades, US economic data was free of political bias. This sacking undermines that credibility. Although Trump officials were quick to justify it, Trump's trade advisor summed it up best. He said, and I'm quoting, "The president is the president." Translation: in Trump's America, truth bends to power.
So imagine if the revision in the data, so the correction of errors, is 5 times bigger than the number itself. Then that makes you wonder, well, can I believe this number at all? And I think that that's actually something that needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed fast.
And it's not a first. This is not Trump's first tango with firing competent people. He did it during his first term too. Although back then there were a few grown-ups in the room, a few officials who pushed back. This time that guardrail is gone. Trump has nominated a group of diehards. We saw that during the cabinet meeting. It was almost like a fan convention. Officials gushed about Trump's leadership. They raved about his policies. Social media even compared it to North Korea. The officials sounded less like public servants and more like hype men and women, echoing every whim, amplifying every impulse. If he says it's raining, they will bring an umbrella to a desert. If he calls gravity a hoax, they will jump off a building to prove him right. And if you think this sounds like a cult, you're not wrong. The dynamics are textbook. Look at the way Trump talks about his White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt.
She's become a star. It's that face. It's that brain. It's those lips, the way they move. They move like she's a machine gun. She's a star. She's a great person, actually. But I don't think anybody has ever had a better press secretary than Caroline.
You heard it right. This is what the US president said, the way those lips move. It's not just creepy, it's workplace harassment wrapped in a compliment. And no one on his team called it out, not even Caroline Leavitt herself. Why? Because you can never question Donald Trump. His officials do not challenge him, they echo him, erasing the line between loyalty and servitude.
Happy with you. Great job. Thank you very much.
So the question now is not whether Trump's White House has become a cult. It does badly look like one. The question is there anyone left to say no? If you blinked in 2024, you might have missed this part. Iran and Pakistan firing missiles at each other. It happened last year. It was not war, but it wasn't peace either. Iran hit terror targets inside Pakistan. Pakistan retaliated and the world braced for yet another conflict. That was last year. Fast forward to today, and things are very different. Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, is in Islamabad. He shook hands with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. The two leaders toasted to so-called brotherhood, and they're now eyeing trade deals. Clearly, something has changed, and that's what we'll discuss tonight. What has changed? Iran and Pakistan share a long history. Iran, in fact, was the first country to recognize Pakistan after independence. The Shah of Iran was an early backer of Islamabad, but since the Iranian Revolution in 1979, relations have been something of a roller coaster. The two countries share a long border, 900 kilometers long. It slices through the volatile Baloch heartland. And this means two provinces, Sistan Baluchistan in Iran and Balochistan in Pakistan. They're both restive, both underdeveloped and both home to militants. The porous border makes it easy for militants to slip across. Both sides accuse each other of harboring terrorists. There have been 15 cross-border incidents in the last decade. The leaders have acknowledged this. They're promising better border management, also effective steps against terrorism, which is ironical because that is Pakistan's biggest export. It harbors terrorists and supports terror factories. Although here the subtext was clear, let's stop blaming each other and start trading instead. That's what Iran and Pakistan are trying to do. Currently, bilateral trade stands at around $3 billion. The The new goal is $10 billion, which of course won't be easy. Both sides know that. They have signed 12 MOUs, 12 memorandums of understanding. They range from agriculture to the IT sector. There's also a push to formalize informal trade, like cheap Iranian oil or Pakistani rice. They are already traded through grey zones. The idea is to regulate and tax it. Having said that, this summit was not just about trade. Pakistan openly backed Iran's nuclear program, or what it calls Iran's right to peaceful nuclear energy. Note the words there. Shehbaz Sharif added the word peaceful. That does not change the statement, though. And it's important because just weeks ago, Washington bombed Iran's nuclear sites. So Sharif's statement was almost a balancing act. Enough rhetorical warmth for Tehran and no burnt bridges with Washington.
पाकिस्तान का जनाब सदर असूली मौक़िफ़ है कि ईरान को पुरअमन मकासद के लिए अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा के चार्टर के मुताबिक पुरअमन मकासद के लिए आपको जौहरी ताकत हासिल करने का पूरा हक हासिल है और मैं समझता हूँ कि इसके लिए पाकिस्तान ईरान के असूली मौक़िफ़ के साथ खड़ा है.
And then there's the Israel factor. Both have condemned the bombing of Gaza. Both have decried Western hypocrisy. But again, Islamabad's solidarity is vocal, not material. Iran is locked in a direct shadow war with Israel. It sees itself as the tip of the spear. Pakistan, on the other hand, is more like the guy in the back of the crowd, nodding vigorously but staying off the front lines.
मैं समझता हूँ जनाब सदर कि हालिया जून में जो इसराइल ने बग़ैर किसी वजह के बग़ैर किसी ठोस कॉज के जो ईरान के ख़िलाफ़ जारियत की, मैं नहीं, मेरी हुकूमत ने नहीं, बल्कि पाकिस्तान के 24 करोड़ अवाम ने उसकी भरपूर मज़म्मत की और मैं समझता हूँ कि कोई जवाब नहीं था इस जंग का.
این تجاوزات بار دیگر ضرورت اجماع منطقه‌ای و جهانی علیه اقدامات قانون شکنانه رژیم صهیونیستی را آشکار کرد.
So on paper, the Pakistan-Iran reset looks promising. Trade targets, cultural cooperation, better border security, and a rare display of diplomatic alignment. But you see, paper burns fast in this part of the world. The shared border remains volatile. Regional alignments are all minefields, and Pakistan's own internal stability is far from guaranteed. So will they be better neighbors? Or is this visit just about better optics? The thing is, one visit cannot erase decades of distrust. But sometimes even cautious cooperation counts, especially when the alternative is mutual destruction. Let's turn to Gaza now, where suffering has become a way of life. Every day it's the same headlines: starvation deaths, aerial drops, airstrikes, and insufficient aid. You've spoken a lot about Gaza's ordinary civilians, but they're not the only ones suffering. Often forgotten are the Israeli hostages. Around 25 hostages are believed to be held in Gaza. This weekend, Hamas released videos of them. One hostage is seen digging his own grave. The other says he's starving to death. He must warn, it's not easy to watch.
מה שאני עושה עכשיו, אני חופר את הקבר. הקבר שמיועד מבחינתי לי. כי כל יום שעובר הגוף שלי הולך, נחלש, נהיה רזה יותר וחלש יותר. מבחינתי זה נראה שאני בדרך למוות שלי.
אני על סף מוות, ואני בטוח שכמו שאני, כל האסירים האחרים, באותו מצב נפשי ובאותו מצב גופני, אני בטוח בזה. בבקשה תעצרו את הגיהנום הזה שאנחנו נמצאים בו. בבקשה תעצרו את הסבל הזה שאנחנו נמצאים בו. רק תיתנו לנו אוכל, אם לא בשביל רצועת עזה, בשביל החטופים. בבקשה, תכניסו לנו אוכל ושתייה.
The strategy is clear. Hamas senses that global opinion is shifting. Even inside Israel, people are speaking out. They want a hostage deal to end the war. And on cue, Hamas released this video. Their goal is to rally Israeli opinion towards a hostage deal. You just saw the pictures. Anyone would be moved by that. Anyone except Benjamin Netanyahu.
They do not want a deal. They want to break us using these horror videos, and through the false horror propaganda it is spreading around the world, but we will not break. I am filled with an even stronger determination to free our hostages, to eliminate Hamas.
It's a battle of narrative. Israel's foreign minister has left for New York. He will attend a special session of the United Nations Security Council. The agenda is the hostages. Israel will likely use these videos to rally global opinion, to change the tide in this narrative war. But it's unlikely to work because look at the scenes in Gaza. Children are desperately running behind aid trucks. They're scooping up flour from the dirt. How can you possibly justify this? Gazans are currently facing two onslaughts. The first is Israel's military strikes. They have killed at least 41 civilians today, and that includes 20 aid seekers. The second is hunger and starvation. On average, only 87 aid trucks are being allowed into Gaza. That's far less than the 600 required. So Israel is using starvation as a war tactic. And it's not just affecting Gazans, it's also affecting their hostages in Hamas custody. Hamas says, we don't give preference to the hostages. If more aid comes in, the hostages will get food. If not, they will also starve. So Netanyahu is facing pressure from two sides, from the world, which is advocating for the Gazans, and from Israelis who want the hostages back. Yesterday, we saw protests by both these camps. In Australia, tens of thousands protested against the war. In Israel, hundreds called for a hostage deal.
Palestine will be free.
What about the peace talks? Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff visited West Asia last week, but like I said, he's on a detour. He will switch to ending the Ukraine war this week. So maybe next week he'll be back to Gaza. Frankly, it's absurd. The ceasefire talks broke down in Doha last month. Reports say Israel may not want to revive them. Apparently, Netanyahu is chasing a military solution. He wants to free the hostages using force. Meanwhile, the war will continue. Netanyahu may not openly say it in as many words, but his political allies are, like far-right minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. He did something very provocative yesterday. Ben-Gvir led a group of Jews to the Al-Aqsa compound in East Jerusalem. This is a disputed site, Al-Aqsa. Jews call it the Temple Mount, and Muslims call it the Haram al-Sharif. Jordan is the custodian of this compound. It is run based on a very old status quo. And what is that? Jews can visit, but they cannot pray. Ben-Gvir openly violated that status quo. He led prayers inside the Al-Aqsa compound. What's worse, he called for a complete takeover of Gaza.
From here of all places, from Temple Mount, the place where we prove that sovereignty and governance can be done, from here of all place, we should send a message and make sure that today itself we conquer the whole of Gaza Strip, announce sovereignty of the whole of Gaza Strip, take down every Hamas man and encourage voluntary immigration. Only this way will we return the hostages and win the war.
He wants to conquer all of Gaza, and he says that while at one of the holiest sites for Arabs. It's clearly a provocation. It's an insult to anyone involved in the peace process. These are the allies keeping Netanyahu in power, yet we wonder why the war continues. The war continues because leaders want it to continue. Hamas won't budge from its demands. They want to live to fight another day, and Netanyahu won't budge either because he wants the war to extend his political life. Stuck in the middle? The innocent Gazans and hostages. Both sides claim to fight for their people, but they're more than happy to let those people die. Now let's talk about a controversy brewing in Britain. India's former colonizer is demanding more dues. Not reparations, not a return of the looted treasures. It has delivered a parking bill to the Indian mission in London. The UK says the Indian mission owes £9 million. What for? A fee called the congestion charge. It's £15 a day for any vehicle that enters central London. On paper, it's a tax that applies to everyone. But when it comes to diplomats, the rules are different. Under international law, diplomats do not pay taxes. That's what Article 34 of the Vienna Convention says. And India argues that this is a tax, not a service fee. In fact, India is not the only one. Britain wants to collect millions from other countries too. As of 2024, the US owes at least £15 million, Japan owes 10, and they've both refused to pay, just like India. Our next report has more.
£9.1 million. That's the bill. According to Britain, this is what India owes for driving diplomatic vehicles through central London. For not paying what's called the congestion charge. It is £15 a day. It is applied to any vehicle entering designated zones in London. But when it comes to diplomatic missions, the rules aren't that simple. India believes the UK is trying to charge a tax. Under international rules, diplomats are exempt from paying taxes. That's what Article 34 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations states. It's a treaty the UK signed in 1961. So this isn't about paying or not paying. It's about definition of the congestion charge. Is this a user fee like parking? Or is it a mandatory tax, which the state can collect? India says it's the latter. So does the US. So does Japan. These are three of the world's biggest democracies. And they are all on the same side. But Transport for London, or TfL, disagrees. They say, this isn't a tax. It's a charge for a service. And that means diplomats must pay. TfL wrote to India's High Commission twice. They said there is no legal ground for exemption. But here's the question. Is this really about traffic? Or is it just a diplomatic flex? Because if this is about enforcement, Britain's got bigger problems. According to TfL, the US Embassy in London owes £15 million. A 2024 report called it the worst offender among diplomatic missions. The US bill goes back over a decade. Japan is next, owing over £10 million. India follows with around £9 million. Then comes Nigeria, China, and Russia. In total, embassies in London owe more than £143 million. The charge itself is simple. £15 a day. It applies to most vehicles entering central London, between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays, and from noon to 6 p.m. on weekends and holidays. But when diplomatic law is clear, why are these bills being sent? Remember, this comes just months after India and the UK sealed a trade agreement, a deal that took years to negotiate, and one that's being touted as a new chapter in India-UK ties. But stories like these undermine that trust. Britain cannot lecture on diplomatic conduct while ignoring global norms it helped shape. And if we're talking about unpaid dues, why not talk about what Britain still owes India? It extracted wealth, worth trillions of dollars, after nearly 200 years of colonial rule. From resources to textiles, from labor to even gold. According to experts, the British Empire drained $45 trillion from India. That's not symbolic. That's real economic loss. And not a penny has ever been returned. Beyond the money, the Kohinoor still sits in the British Crown. Indian artifacts still fill British museums. And those colonial legacies? They still shape trade rules today. So if Britain wants to talk about unpaid dues, it might want to look inward first.
When plastic was first invented more than a century ago, it was hailed as revolutionary. It was called miracle material because plastic was versatile. It was durable. It is durable. So today it is everywhere. Look at the top of Mount Everest or the deepest ocean trench, the Mariana, and you will find one thing in common: plastic. It is in the food that we eat and the air that we breathe. It is on every continent, even in the organs of penguins on the Antarctic. It is inside our bodies too, inside our blood, our brains, inside breast milk and bone marrow. And plastic is not just ubiquitous, it is also a grave, growing and under-recognized danger. This is what top researchers have said. A new expert review is out. It says that the world is in a plastics crisis. And it is hurting us. It causes health problems from infancy to old age, including birth defects, heart attacks, and even cancer. This crisis is costing the world about $1.5 trillion every year. It is easy to see why. Our planet is home to 8 billion tons of plastic, and this number is only increasing. I'll give you two reasons why. First, plastic production is increasing dramatically. Since 1950, it has increased by over 200 times. By 2060, it is set to almost triple. That's when more than 1 billion tons of plastic will be produced. This is mainly thanks to single-use plastics, your soda bottles, chips packets, and fast food containers. They are accelerating plastic production. Which brings me to the second big problem. While too much plastic is being added, not enough is being removed. Less than 10% of it is recycled. The rest of it is shoved in landfills, littered on our roads and thrown in our rivers. And slowly it disintegrates. Plastic waste breaks down into microplastics. These are much smaller bits of plastic. They enter your bodies through food, water, air, and exacerbate problems. But disposal is not the only issue. It is also the very production of plastics. More than 98% of plastics are made from fossil fuels like oil, gas, and coal. Also toxic chemicals. This increases pollution, contaminating the earth and our bodies. So how do we fix this? Single-use plastics are the main problem, so shifting to paper straws or paper bags can help. But it cannot solve the problem, because this issue is not about a few people. This is a global policy issue. The world needs better regulations, stricter, enforceable rules to reduce plastic pollution. And maybe there is hope. This review comes ahead of key negotiations. The Global Plastics Treaty talks. These talks began in 2022. Their sixth and possibly the final round will be held next month in Geneva. More than 100 countries and over 1,000 scientists will participate. Their goal? To come up with an internationally legally binding treaty to cap plastic production and to look at disposal, design and consumption. If this sounds too good to be true, that's because maybe it is. Since the talks began, no one seems to be on the same page. Industry lobbyists have flooded the talks. These are wealthy and influential groups, and they say the experts have it all wrong. That we don't need to curb production, we need to improve recycling. Sure we do, we need to boost recycling, but reducing production is critical too. Because plastic is not like paper or steel. Like I said earlier, it is made by toxic chemicals, about 16,000 of them. So it is not easy to recycle, which is why we need to look at production, consumption and disposal, all of it. We have to tackle all life stages of plastics. The world can only hope that the talks achieve this goal, because at this point, we need a miracle to fight the so-called miracle material. The animal, mighty rhinoceros. The superpower, radioactive horns. Our next story sounds like it is straight out of an animal superhero movie, except this is happening in real life, in South Africa to be specific. Researchers are making rhino horns radioactive. They are injecting nuclear material inside the horns to give the animals a protective shield of their own. So how does it work and what's behind this move? Our next report tells you.
They are big, They are bulky. And these beasts are known for their giant horns. In fact, that's where they get their name from, rhinoceros, meaning nose horn. But it is these very horns that put rhinos at risk. In the beginning of the 20th century, the global rhino population stood at around 5 lakhs. But today it has decreased to about 27,000. This is because of a booming black market. For decades now, rhino horns have been in high demand. Despite being largely illegal, rhino horns are seen as a status symbol. They are given as gifts. They are used to make jewelry and ornate cups. They are even used in traditional medicine, mainly in China and Vietnam. These horns are so sought after that they're priced by weight rivals that of cocaine and gold, especially in the Asian markets. So rhinos are poached, and their horns are trafficked across the world. It is a complex global trade network. And at the epicenter of this is South Africa. It is home to the largest rhino population in the world. It is estimated at 16,000, and about 500 rhinos are killed for their horns every year. For years now, this has been a headache for the South African government. They have put in strict rules. They have tried dehorning rhinos. They have poisoned the horns. They have tried to flood markets with fake horns. But nothing has deterred poachers.
I'm fearful because
So now, researchers are trying something different. They are turning rhinos into super rhinos by giving them radioactive horns. The University of the Witwatersrand, along with the International Atomic Energy Agency, has come up with an ingenious idea. They have launched an anti-poaching campaign, whereby they inject radioactive material into live rhino horns. The study began last year. It involved 20 rhinos, and here's what it has confirmed. The process is completely harmless. While the rhinos are sleeping, their horns are injected. They don't feel any pain, but what happens next helps protect them. The radiation makes the horns easy to detect. Airports and border patrols have radiation detectors. The nuclear material in horns will set them off, leading to the arrest of traffickers.
So you're using radioactive material, small quantities of it, inserted into the horn of a rhino, which is like then putting a massive bright light into the horn that no one can turn off. It stays there, and as it goes across borders, the detectors are in place that can pick it up.
You can't take it through any airport, any harbour, any customs office. Sirens go off. This could be the holy grail to save the species.
Plus, the injection poisons the horn, making it bad for consumption. So the value of horns is expected to fall in black markets.
By making the horns radioactive, we are making those horns, devaluing those horns in the eyes of the poacher and the end users. No one wants a radioactive horn.
This is a radical solution. Experts say it will help, but it is not the end game. They are demanding stricter and better enforced policies that can bring an end to this crisis. Until then, South Africa hopes that the radioactive rhino horns can disrupt the flow of smuggling, help map out illegal channels, and importantly, force poachers to pull in their horns.
India became a free nation on August 15, 1947. But what does freedom really mean? A flag? A constitution? A memory? Or does it mean the right to choose our own allies, to build billion-dollar companies, to launch rockets, to run the world's biggest election? India's story is no longer just about breaking free. It's about breaking through. From diplomacy to defense, from cricket fields to Chandrayaan, from yoga to UPI, for the next 11 days, we will take you on a journey through the stories that define India at 78, a country that's still young, but already rewriting the rules of the modern world. This is the India story. Today, India is a world leader in real-time digital payments. It processes billions of transactions each month through UPI. India's IT companies power much of the world's software needs. From Aadhaar to UPI, from Infosys to TCS, India's tech innovations have reshaped its economy. And they've set new benchmarks for the world. But how did a country that had just 38 engineering colleges and no computing industry in 1947 become an IT and tech powerhouse? This is the story of India's rise, from colonial rule to digital dominance. When the British rule ended, India inherited a battered economy. The British ignored education, science, and industry. For a population of 350 million in 1947, we had less than 40 engineering colleges, and only 3,000 students were training in technical fields. But within decades, India became a global leader in software and digital infra. This transformation was not swift, and it was not accidental. It was the result of landmark policy changes, scientific ambition, and relentless enterprise. Our story begins in 1950, when India opened IIT Kharagpur. IIT stands for Indian Institutes of Technology. Today, they are the country's top institutes in science and tech. But the beginnings were humble. IIT Kharagpur started with just 10 departments, 42 teachers, and 224 students. And guess where they set up the institute? In what used to be a colonial detention camp. I suppose it was a symbolic choice. Then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru was bullish about these plans. He was India's first Prime Minister. He wanted to use science to rebuild the nation. Over the next decade, 4 more IITs were set up. IIT Bombay in 1958, IIT Madras and IIT Kanpur in 1959, and IIT Delhi in 1961. These institutes were modelled on MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the US. India wanted institutes that did not just produce engineers, but also led research and industrial transformation. Around the same time in Mumbai, the groundwork for India's digital future was being laid. We have now reached the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, TIFR. In 1954, they embarked on an ambitious project. A 6-member team was set up, and this was the man in charge, R. Narasimhan. Narasimhan was a young professor. He was recruited by Homi J. Bhabha, the father of India's nuclear program. Narasimhan and 5 other scientists set out to build a computer. None of them had seen one before. All they had were blueprints and passion. 5 years later, they delivered the TFRAC, the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research Automatic Calculator. This was Asia's first indigenous digital computer. It put India on the global computing map. This was the modest beginning of India's journey towards tech supremacy. The first 2 decades were mostly about laying the foundation. Then in 1968, our story takes a defining turn. When Indian industrialist J.R.D. Tata had an idea, he wanted to modernize the Tata Group. He wanted to use computers to process data, and for this, he recruited Fakir Chand Kohli, an engineer and manager at Tata Electric. Kohli was given a new mission, to build a team that could master computer technology and help the Tatas automate their businesses. That's when TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, was born. TCS started small. It developed technologies to manage punch cards and payrolls. But Kohli had a bigger vision. He believed they should not limit themselves. They should offer these services to the whole world. And here is how Kohli put it. Many years ago, there was an industrial revolution. We missed it for reasons beyond our control. Today, there is a new revolution, a revolution in information technology. If we miss this opportunity, those who follow us will not forgive us. Kohli did not miss the opportunity. He took a giant leap. He convinced the Tata Group to take on foreign clients. And that's how TCS grew from a modest data processing firm to one of the largest IT companies in the world. Their first major software deal came in 1974. TCS was asked to develop and deliver software for Burroughs. It was a leading American computer manufacturer at the time. And this was the origin of the IT outsourcing boom. There was no local demand for software and regulations were strict. So Indian firms sent engineers abroad to write code. It was an export model born of necessity, and it delivered results that few had envisioned. In 1977, a protectionist policy was in place, and it unintentionally helped our tech industry. That year, India had expelled multinationals like IBM. This was over foreign equity rules. So homegrown firms filled the gap, and more players entered the field. Like Shiv Nadar's HCL. They seized the opportunity. They started providing computing solutions. Then came the major turning points. In 1984, India introduced a new computer policy. This was under the government of Rajiv Gandhi. Tariffs were cut and licensing barriers for software exports were removed. In 1991, sweeping economic reforms liberalized the Indian economy. And for the software industry, there was no looking back. Exports rose exponentially. The world now turned to Indian IT players, not just for cheap labor, but also for reliable, high-quality services. This momentum gave birth to India's IT giants and cemented the legacy of older players. Infosys, Wipro, TCS, the companies boomed. Bengaluru became the Silicon Valley of the East. India's engineers fueled the global tech economy, and over the last decade, India has leveraged this prowess. It has used this know-how to solve its own problems. It has built digital infrastructure for its people and delivered breakthrough innovations like the UPI, the Unified Payments Interface. It was launched in 2016 by the Narendra Modi government. It turned smartphones into banks. It made payments as easy as a tap on a screen. By 2025, UPI set a record. It accounts for nearly 84% of all digital transactions in India. We lead the world in real-time payments. Similarly, the JAM Trinity had a sweeping effect on Indian banking. JAM is an acronym. It combines three powerful innovations. J stands for Jan Dhan bank accounts, zero balance accounts under India's financial inclusion program. A stands for Aadhaar, India's unique ID system, and M stands for mobile connectivity. It transformed welfare and financial inclusion, especially in rural India. It gave the poor access to banking. It enabled direct bank transfers of subsidies. So money was transferred directly to recipients without any leakage. Identities can be verified with a thumbprint, and welfare was distributed directly, without corruption or delay. These innovations are not just efficient, they are democratic, they are cost-effective, and they reach the last mile. Even Western economies have studied India's model. The United Nations has praised UPI for enabling financial inclusion. As we celebrate these successes, we must also be cognizant of the new challenge on the horizon, artificial intelligence. It is changing the game. India's tech sector is at a crossroads. The IT industry earns more than $245 billion a year. More than $200 billion of it comes from exports. Software services, maintenance, testing. This is for global clients, mainly in the US and Europe. But AI could hit this model hard. Automated tools can now write code, they can test programs and handle back-end operations. And the impact is already showing. In 2023, 7 of India's biggest IT firms, including TCS and Infosys, laid off 75,000 workers. That's 4% of their combined workforce. They say it was not because of AI, but the writing is on the wall. Hiring has been slow, and the industry is re-evaluating its future. The old formula may no longer work. We need a new strategy. The bad news is there is no template for this pivot. The good news is we've done it before. When we started from scratch, from building talent in the IITs that is now running the Silicon Valley to outsourcing software to solving domestic challenges with tech, India has beaten the odds. What we face now is more of a churn. India must develop deep expertise in AI. It must own intellectual property and lead in building trusted, scalable solutions. As we mark 78 years of independence, our tech story is not just an economic success. It is living proof that long-term thinking and bold ambition can take a nation from the margins to the main stage. It's a big day for Indian cricket. The men's team narrowly defeated England in London. Nobody expected us to win today, so the result came as a pleasant surprise. But it has also triggered a lot of online banter, mostly thanks to the timing. August is when India broke away from British rule, and today is August 4th. Another August, another Indian victory over the Brits. The jokes came flooding in.
Everybody wants to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
Now, Boulder!
Yeah! Yeah! We got there, yippee!
Guys, we understand. I think India's got a killing.
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. A volcano in Russia's Far East erupts for the first time in 600 years. Heavy rain batters southern Taiwan, and Chinese robot soccer teams train for World Humanoid Robot Games. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1944, Anne Frank was caught with her family by the Nazis. The Gestapo seized everything, but her diary was later recovered. After the Second World War, it was published as the diary of a young girl. It became one of the most powerful testimonies of the Holocaust. We are leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.